There's a piece of technology that criminals are using right now to steal retirement savings from American seniors at a scale that the FBI calls one of the fastest growing fraud threats in the country. It does not require hacking your computer. It does not require stealing your mail. It does not require anyone to physically come near you or your money. It requires 3 seconds of your voice. That is it. 3 seconds of audio harvested from a voicemail greeting, a Facebook video, a YouTube comment, a church live stream, a family video posted by a grandchild. 3 seconds. And with those 3 seconds, a criminal on the other side of the world can manufacture a phone call in which your son, your daughter, your grandchild, or your spouse sounds exactly like themselves, crying, terrified and genuine distress, begging you for money and asking you not to tell anyone. And the reason this works on people who are intelligent, careful, and not naive is that it does not sound like a scam. It sounds like the person you love most in the world having the worst day of their life. In 2025, Americans lost $7.7 billion to cybercrime scams targeting people over the age of 60. That is a 37% increase from the year before. AI-enabled fraud, the category that includes voice cloning, was one of the fastest growing segments within that number. The FBI broke out AI-assisted fraud as its own separate category for the first time in its 2025 Internet Crime Report, and found that seniors lost $352 million specifically to AI-enabled scams in a single year. And that number represents only the cases where victims or investigators identified AI involvement. The actual figure is almost certainly higher. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how voice cloning works, exactly how criminals are using it to target retirees specifically, the 4 variations of this scam that are running right now in 2026, why the voice alone is no longer a reliable way to verify who is calling you, and the 5 protection moves that can stop this scam before it ever reaches your bank account. I am also going to tell you about 3 things you can do today that cost nothing and take less than 30 minutes combined, and that will significantly reduce your exposure to every variation of this fraud. But first, I want to tell you about a client of mine. I'm going to call her Beverly. Beverly is 73 years old. She lives outside of Phoenix, Arizona. She spent 26 years as an elementary school principal before she retired. She has a pension, a modest IRA, and a paid-off home. She is sharp, organized, and not someone who would describe herself as easy to fool. On a Tuesday afternoon last October, Beverly received a phone call from her grandson. She recognized his voice immediately. She had known that voice since the day he was born. He was crying. He told her he had been in a car accident. He told her the other driver was injured and that the police were involved. He told her his lawyer needed $4,800 wired immediately to keep him out of jail overnight. He begged her not to call his parents because he did not want to worry them. He said he was embarrassed and scared and that she was the only person he trusted. Beverly wired the money within 45 minutes of the call. She found out 3 hours later, when her daughter called about something unrelated, that her grandson was at home, uninjured, and had not been in any accident. He had posted a 12-second birthday video on Instagram 6 weeks earlier. That video was all the raw audio a voice cloning tool needed. The criminal had the voice. They had Beverly's phone number from a data broker list. They had the emotional script that has been running on seniors for years, the grandparent scam, the fake emergency, the request for secrecy. The only thing that was new was that this time the voice was real. Beverly lost $4,800. She reported it to the FTC and the FBI. She has not recovered a cent. She told me later that the worst part was not the money. The worst part was sitting in her car in her driveway after she found out, replaying the call in her head, knowing she had heard her grandson's voice, knowing it had sounded exactly right, and not being able to understand how it had not been him. It was not him. It was a computer program that had learned his voice from 12 seconds of audio on a social media platform that Beverly does not even use. My name is Marcus Steele. I am an enrolled agent licensed by the federal government to represent taxpayers directly in front of the Internal Revenue Service. I work with retirees every week on financial protection, tax security, and the kind of fraud that specifically targets people who have spent a lifetime building something worth taking. And the scam I am about to describe is the one I am hearing about more than any other right now. Not because the people it catches are careless, because the technology behind it has crossed a line that makes the old defenses completely inadequate. Let me explain exactly how voice cloning works, because understanding it changes how you respond to every phone call you receive from this point forward. Artificial intelligence voice cloning works by analyzing a sample of a person's voice, as short as 3 seconds, and building a mathematical model of the vocal patterns, the pitch, the cadence, the specific way that person forms certain sounds. Once that model exists, a criminal can type any words they want, and the software produces audio in the cloned voice saying exactly those words, naturally, convincingly, with the emotional inflection of a frightened or upset person if that is what the criminal types. The tools that do this are not experimental. They are not available only to sophisticated criminal organizations. Multiple voice cloning applications are commercially available online right now, some of them free, some available by subscription for less than $20 a month. Consumer Reports tested 6 of the most widely available AI voice cloning tools in 2025 and found that 4 of the 6 had no meaningful safeguards preventing them from being used to clone voices without the subject's consent. Voice cloning attacks increased by 442% in 2025 compared to 2024. That is not a typo. 442% in a single year. Deepfake-enabled voice fraud attempts increased by more than 1,600% in the first quarter of 2025 alone compared to the previous quarter. The acceleration is not slowing down. It is speeding up, and the primary targets are seniors, specifically because they are more likely to have accumulated savings, more likely to have strong emotional bonds with children and grandchildren that criminals can exploit, and more likely to act quickly when a loved one appears to be in danger. Now, let me walk you through the 4 variations of this scam that are most active right now, because each one uses the voice cloning technology differently, and each one requires a different kind of defense. The first variation is the Grandparent Scam, which is what happened to Beverly, and which is the most emotionally devastating version because it weaponizes your love for the people closest to you. A voice clone of your grandchild, your child, or sometimes a close friend calls you in apparent distress. There's an accident. There's an arrest. There's a medical emergency. There's a legal problem that needs to be resolved immediately and quietly. The voice is real. The emotion is manufactured. The urgency is designed to prevent you from stopping to verify. The request for secrecy, please do not tell my parents, please do not call anyone, is the single most important signal in this scam, and I will come back to it. The money is always requested in a form that cannot be reversed. Wire transfer, gift cards, cryptocurrency, cash sent through a courier who arrives at your door. The irreversibility is not accidental. It is the entire mechanism that makes this scam work. Once the money moves, it is gone. The second variation is the government impersonation scam, and this one is more sophisticated because it uses voice cloning to impersonate official agencies rather than family members. You receive a call from someone who sounds exactly like an IRS agent, a Social Security Administration representative, or a Medicare official. The caller tells you there is a problem with your account, a discrepancy on your tax return, a suspicious transaction linked to your Social Security number, a fraud investigation involving your Medicare benefits. The voice is authoritative and professional. The story is detailed and specific, and the solution always involves immediate action, a payment, a verification of your personal information, a transfer of funds to a secure account while the investigation is ongoing. In 2025, the Federal Trade Commission received more than 330,000 government impersonation complaints, a 25% increase from the prior year. Government impersonation scams cost Americans $798 million in a single year. The voice cloning layer is what has made these scams dramatically more convincing in 2026 because the caller no longer needs to rely on a script alone. They can make the voice sound exactly like an official government representative, calm, serious, and credible. The third variation is the tech support scam with a voice cloning upgrade. You receive a call or a pop-up warning that your computer has been compromised. The caller, who may now sound exactly like a Microsoft or Apple support representative using a cloned voice template trained on public customer service audio, walks you through downloading remote access software. Once you do, the criminal has complete control of your computer, your bank accounts, your email, and every password stored on the device. The more sophisticated version of this scam, which the FBI has specifically named the Phantom Hacker scam, adds a second call from someone impersonating your bank, and sometimes a third call from someone impersonating a government agency, all working in a coordinated sequence to convince you that your retirement savings need to be moved to a safe account immediately. Seniors have lost entire retirement accounts, balances in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, to this 3-layer coordinated version. The fourth variation is the romance and investment scam, and this one operates on a longer timeline. A person contacts you through a dating app, a social media platform, or a messaging app. The relationship builds over weeks or months. The person is attentive, intelligent, and emotionally engaging. And then at some point, they introduce either a financial emergency that requires your help or an investment opportunity that has produced remarkable returns for them and that they want to share with you. The voice cloning technology has changed this scam in a fundamental way. Criminals can now run dozens of fake relationships simultaneously using AI tools that manage the conversations and voice calls automatically. The average loss in AI-assisted long-term romance fraud targeting older Americans exceeded $50,000 in documented 2025 cases. In some cases, it was significantly more. Now, let me tell you about the 5 protection moves that work against every variation of this scam. And I want to be direct about why these specific moves work when others do not, because there's a lot of advice floating around about senior scam protection that misses the most important point. The most important point is this: the voice is no longer a reliable verification method. It never was for text or email, and most people understood that. As of 2025, it is no longer reliable for phone calls either. A voice you recognize, a voice that sounds exactly right, is no longer proof that the person calling you is who they claim to be. That is the fundamental shift. And every protection move I'm about to describe is built around that single reality. Protection move number 1 is the family safe word system. Sit down with your children and grandchildren this week and establish a code word, a word that only your family knows, a word that has no meaning in any public context, something completely arbitrary. If anyone calls you claiming to be a family member in an emergency, you ask for the safe word. If they cannot provide it, you hang up and call the family member directly using a number you already have saved, not a number the caller gives you. This works because the criminal cloning your grandson's voice does not know your family safe word. They have his voice. They do not have the word you and your family agreed on in your kitchen last Tuesday. Set this up this week. Not next month, this week. Because the scam that catches people is the one they did not prepare for. Protection move number 2 is the mandatory callback rule. For any call that involves money, any call where someone is asking you to send funds, wire money, buy gift cards, provide banking information, or take any financial action, you hang up and call back. Not using a number the caller provides, using a number you independently verify. Your bank's number from the back of your card, your grandchild's number from your own contacts, the official government agency number from the agency's official website. The mandatory callback eliminates the voice cloning threat entirely for financial requests, because the criminal cannot receive your callback. They can only make outbound calls using the cloned voice. The moment you hang up and call a verified number, the scam breaks. The hardest part of this rule is executing it when the caller is a perfect imitation of someone you love who appears to be in genuine distress. That is the design. The urgency and the emotional manipulation are there specifically to prevent you from pausing to verify. The rule is non-negotiable precisely because of how hard it feels to follow in that moment. Protection move number 3 is the secrecy signal. In every version of this scam, the caller will ask you to keep the transaction secret. Do not tell your daughter. Do not call the bank. Do not discuss this with anyone. Handle it quietly and quickly. That request for secrecy is the most reliable signal that you are being scammed. No legitimate emergency, no real legal situation, no actual government process requires secrecy from your own family. The moment anyone asks you to keep a financial transaction secret from the people closest to you, stop. That is the signal. Not a red flag, a stop sign. Hang up. Call your family. Tell them exactly what happened. Protection move number 4 is to reduce your voice footprint on public platforms. The audio criminals use to clone your family members' voices comes from public social media posts, voicemail greetings, YouTube videos, Facebook live streams, church recordings, and any other platform where audio is publicly accessible. You cannot eliminate this risk entirely, but you can reduce the available material by reviewing the privacy settings on every social media account you and your family members use, and limiting who can access audio and video content. Specifically, ask your grandchildren and children to review their own social media privacy settings. A birthday video set to private rather than public is not available to a criminal running a voice cloning operation. A Facebook video limited to friends only is significantly harder to access than one set to public. You will not convince your grandchildren to stop posting videos, but asking them to check whether their posts are visible to everyone on the internet is a reasonable conversation that could reduce your family's exposure meaningfully. Protection. Move number 5 is to know the irreversible payment methods and refuse them absolutely. Wire transfers cannot be reversed. Gift card payments cannot be reversed. Cryptocurrency payments cannot be reversed. Cash sent with a courier cannot be recovered. Any legitimate emergency involving a family member, any real legal situation, any actual government process has payment methods that can be documented, verified, and if necessary, reversed. The moment someone asks you to pay with gift cards, wire money to an account you have never used, send cryptocurrency, or hand cash to a courier who comes to your door, the answer is no, not maybe, not let me think about it. No, I have never, in 20 years of financial work, encountered a legitimate emergency that could only be resolved with an iTunes gift card. Now, let me give you 3 things you can do today, right now, before you close this video, that will reduce your exposure immediately. The first thing is to call your closest family member and set up the safe word. 1 phone call, 5 minutes. Done. From this point forward, any caller claiming to be that person who cannot provide the word is not that person. The second thing is to Google your own name and your family members' names and review what audio and video is publicly accessible. You may find voicemail greetings, old YouTube videos, Facebook posts from years ago, or other audio you did not realize was publicly available. Review the privacy settings on everything you find and consider whether it needs to be restricted. The third thing is to register your phone number at donotcall.gov and report any suspicious call you receive to the FTC at reportfraud.ftc.gov. Reporting does not recover your money if you have already been victimized, but it creates the data that helps law enforcement identify patterns and disrupt the criminal operations behind these scams. Every reported call makes the system more effective for the next senior who gets targeted. Beverly reported her case. The FTC investigated. The specific criminal operation that targeted her was connected to a larger network that had stolen more than $11 million from seniors across 14 states using the same voice cloning methodology. The investigation that began with Beverly's report contributed to a federal indictment in early 2026. She has not recovered her money. But what happened to her has potentially prevented it from happening to dozens of other families. Let me bring this together with the one thing I want every retiree to walk away from this video knowing. The technology has changed. The emotional manipulation has not. Criminals have always used urgency, fear, and love to move money. They have always asked you to act fast, keep it secret, and not verify. Those tactics are unchanged because they work. What is new is that they now come with a voice that sounds exactly like your grandson. But here's what the criminals cannot clone. Your safe word, your callback rule, your commitment to pause before any financial transaction, regardless of how real the voice sounds. Those three things, in combination, make you an extremely difficult target. Not because the technology does not work, because you have built a system around the technology's limitation. The limitation is that it can reproduce a voice. It cannot reproduce the private agreements you made with your family. It cannot receive your callback. And it cannot override your decision to say no to any payment that cannot be reversed, regardless of who appears to be asking. Before I close, I want to give you something to take with you. I have put together a free checklist, my 2026 Senior Fraud Protection Checklist. It covers the voice cloning scam in full detail, along with the 5 other AI-enabled fraud types that are most active against retirees right now. It includes the safe word setup guide, the mandatory callback protocol for financial requests, the 5 irreversible payment methods to refuse absolutely, the official reporting contacts for every type of fraud, and the privacy settings review checklist for every major social media platform. Every item includes specific instructions and, where applicable, the official government resource to use. To get it, go to marcusgravestacks.com/checklist. The link is also in the description below. Print it out, share it with your family. Go through the safe word conversation before the end of this week. Because the scam Beverly fell for does not announce itself as a scam. It announces itself as the worst phone call of your life. And the only way to be ready for it is to decide how you will respond before it arrives. Here's what I want to leave you with. Beverly is not careless. Beverly is not naive. Beverly spent 26 years as a school principal, which means she spent 26 years making judgment calls about people and situations under pressure. She heard her grandson's voice. She heard him scared. She heard him asking for help. Every instinct she had, every good instinct she had built over a lifetime, told her to help. The technology exploited her instincts on purpose. That is the design. What Beverly knows now, and what every retiree in America needs to know today, is that hearing a voice you recognize is no longer enough. The voice can be manufactured. The safe word cannot. The callback can catch it. And the refusal to pay in ways that cannot be reversed stops it completely, regardless of how real the voice sounds. Send this video to one person in your life who is over 65. A parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, a friend from church. It does not matter how sharp they are or how carefully they manage their finances. Beverly was sharp. Beverly was careful. Beverly lost $4,800 on a Tuesday afternoon because a criminal had 12 seconds of her grandson's voice and a script she had never been warned about. One share from you today could be the difference between someone's retirement savings staying intact and someone standing in their driveway wondering how the voice on the phone was not the person they loved. That is what this channel is here to do. I will see you in the next one.